I'm Africa 54 managing editor Vincent Makori in for hashtag the You What. It's Thursday, December the 30th. This is Africa 54.
Mourners pay their last respects to Nobel Prize winner Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Poor Kenyans are evicted to make way for the China-built Nairobi Expressway. And a closer look at the devastating impact of climate change on the Sahel.
Hundreds of mourners paid their final respects on Thursday to Archbishop Desmond Tutu, whose body lay in state at St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town, where the anti-apartheid hero preached against racial injustice. Tutu, who died Sunday, was a Nobel Peace Prize winner and was widely revered across racial and cultural divides in South Africa for his moral rectitude and principled fight against white minority rule. Speaking to Reuters outside the cathedral, mourners paid tribute to Tutu, saying he was the voice of the voiceless and always a voice of reason. Tutu, who requested the cheapest coffin and did not want any lavish funeral expense, will be cremated and his remains interred behind the St. George's Cathedral pulpit he often used to preach against racial injustice. As dignitaries in South Africa mourned the anti-apartheid hero, acting U.S. Ambassador to South Africa Todd P. Haskel spoke to VOA about his legacy.
I think in his life, Desmond Tutu inspired millions of people all around the world, including in the United States. With his fight for justice, and also his idea that it is important for people to stand with the oppressed against oppressors, that there is no neutrality between the oppressed and oppressors, that if you choose neutrality, in fact, you're with the oppressor. And I think that's a message that inspired, obviously, millions of South Africans, millions of people around the world, but even in my own country, my generation, we found the struggle for freedom here in South Africa to be something that inspired a lot of us to come into public service, including myself. And clearly Archbishop Tutu was a big part of that all through his life. Okay.
Well, that was Todd P. Haskel, acting U.S. Ambassador to South Africa, speaking to VOA in Cape Town. At the St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town, where Desmond Tutu served as South Africa's first Black Archbishop, the cathedral's dean explains the significance of the location where the anti-apartheid hero chose to be interred. David Doyle has more.
Mourners gathered outside the home of Archbishop Desmond Tutu on Wednesday to celebrate the life of the anti-apartheid hero through song and dance. Tutu, a Nobel laureate who preached against the tyranny of white minority rule, died on Sunday, aged 90. At the Soweto ceremony, Bishop of Johannesburg, Stephen Morayo, paid tribute.
As we lay to rest our father, our friend, our mentor, our everything, who had these three things that will remain: faith, hope, and love.
Tutu's funeral will be held on Saturday, and at Cape Town's St. George's Cathedral, where he served as South Africa's first Black Archbishop, preparations are underway. It's under this stone on the high altar where his remains will be kept, a spot chosen by Tutu himself. The cathedral's dean, Father Michael Weeder, says the location, next to a cracked stone, has significance.
This fallible, lovely human being, the face of God, there were many cracks in Desmond and Pilo Tutu, but God's light shone through that. So Desmond became less and God became more evident. And so that's a great marker.
Tutu will lie in state at St. George's ahead of Saturday's funeral service, where he will be cremated. His ashes will then be interred under the floor. Tutu spent most of his life in Cape Town and led numerous marches from the steps of St. George's.
We want to wish everyone in the world.
It became known as the People's Cathedral and, like the man who will be laid to rest here, became a powerful symbol of democracy and resistance against apartheid.
David Doyle of Reuters filed that report. Police say fighters from Somalia's Alshabab militant group attacked a town north of Mogadishu on Thursday, killing at least 7 people as they battled government security forces. Police and residents in Bala, 30 kilometers north of Mogadishu, say fighters from the Al-Qaeda-linked group overran government forces guarding a bridge at a town entrance early in the morning. The attack happened amid a political dispute between Somalia's president and prime minister, which its international partners worry has distracted the government from the fight against the insurgents. Somalia, which has had only a limited central government since 1991, is trying to reconstruct itself with the help of the United Nations. The UN and various countries have urged Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble and President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed to settle their dispute. Into West Africa, the Malian army says 4 soldiers were killed and a dozen more seriously injured when their patrol was ambushed by suspected militants in western Mali. The attack occurred late afternoon on Wednesday near the town of Nara, 30 kilometers south of Mali's border with Mauritania. So far, no group has claimed responsibility for the ambush. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are battling an Islamist insurgency that has flourished across Africa's Sahel region, killing thousands and displacing millions of people, despite a 9-year effort by international forces to defeat it. Now, security forces in Sudan fired tear gas at protesters trying to march towards the presidential palace in Khartoum on Thursday. That's according to a Reuters witness. Thursday is the 11th of major demonstrations since an October 25th coup, which saw Abdallah Hamdok removed and then reinstated as prime minister. The demonstrators are demanding that the military play no role in government during a transition to free elections. Sudan's Sovereign Council this week reinstated powers of arrests, detentions and seizures to the country's intelligence service last Saturday. Protesters opposed to military rule reached near the presidential palace in the Sudanese capital, despite heavy tear gas and a communications blackout. Rights groups in Kenya are pushing authorities to resettle tens of thousands of squatters evicted just ahead of the holiday to make way for a Chinese-backed expressway. Brenda Malinya explains from Nairobi.
There is little holiday cheer for Lucy Wangari and scores of Kenyans like her from the Mukuru Kwanjenga slum, spending cold and wet nights living in makeshift tents. City authorities in October began evicting more than 40,000 squatters and razing their homes to make way for construction of the Nairobi Expressway. Authorities gave them just days' notice, despite many like Wangari calling the area home for 18 years.
If you look at where I sleep, you think I wasn't a Kenyan citizen. You think I'm a refugee. We had houses, we had property, but right now we've been left destitute, all because of the government of Kenya.
The $500 million elevated expressway aims to ease Nairobi's notorious traffic by connecting the main international airport to the city center and wealthy suburbs. The Chinese state-owned China Road and Bridge Corporation is building and financing the expressway, which should be working in 2022 and will collect the tolls for nearly 3 decades. Despite critics calling it a road for the rich, Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta has defended the project.
The difference that is being occasioned by the road building, by the drainage being put in, by the sewage being put in, I do believe that within another 2 years, Nairobi will be a truly 21st century city, catering for its population in a positive manner and in a manner befitting our people.
But rights activists fault the government for not striking a balance between the need for infrastructure and human dignity for those evicted.
It's so traumatizing. People are having mental issues here. We have other special challenges here. They should get like special attention, but you find out that even the facilities that we have around, they can't maybe even accommodate or maybe to create that space to provide such services to the people here.
The squatters left homeless struggle with security fears.
It's very dangerous here, especially for us women. The men can defend themselves if attacked, but I can't fight anyone. If someone attacks me and steals my property, tells me to leave, I have no choice but to obey them.
City authorities' promises to help resettle the evicted families have yet to come true. Brenda Mulinya for VOA News, Nairobi.
We are excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, the major region in Africa is plagued by terrorism and conflict, a crisis made worse by the effects of climate change. Stay with us.
Welcome, Baal.
Bonane, eyengai lamu. A madadin dukkan masu ba da gudunmuwa ga shirin lafiyar mu, Alheri Grace Abdi ce ke maku da kamnatattun ku duka fata alheri da kuma fatar an shekara lafiya.
Maisha na Afya inakutakia maandalizi mema ya sikukuu ya Christmas na mwaka mpya popote pale unapoangalia VOA.
Yes, it's the holiday season and we wish you a joyful time filled with love, peace and cheerful celebration.
Tika ete mite malabino banson, mitonda na bolingo kimia pe esengo.
Meilleurs vœux de bonheur et de succès pour 2022 à vous et vos proches. Et surtout, une très bonne santé à tous.
መጪው የጎርጎሮሳውያኑ 2022 ዓመተ ምህረት የሰላምና የጤና እንዲሆንላችሁ ተመኘን።
From all of us here at Healthy Living, have a memorable and safe holiday. All the best to you and your loved ones for the upcoming new year. And strive to make every day in 2022 a healthy day.
Africa's Sahel region is plagued by terrorism and conflict, a crisis exacerbated by the devastating effects of climate change on farmers and animal herders. And Wilkins has the details from Burkina Faso.
The Sahel extends almost 6,000 kilometers, 3,700 miles along the southern edge of the Sahara, from the Horn of Africa on the east to the western Atlantic coast. There's little rainfall in the Sahel, and farmers struggle to eke out a living in some of the harshest agricultural conditions on Earth. As climate change brings more intense droughts and degrades land in the Sahel, intercommunal violence over dwindling resources has increased. Much of the conflict is between herders and farmers who vie against each other to use the land for their own purposes. Some in the region have joined terrorist groups, militants linked to Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, who ride into villages on motorbikes and attack civilians indiscriminately. They wreak havoc and make parts of the region uninhabitable for civilians. While weak states and lack of development are big factors in the conflict, experts say climate change also plays a part. But it's rarely discussed beyond the level of analysts and warnings from the UN. Unlike terrorists on motorbikes, climate change is a cause of the conflict people on the ground cannot see. But it is there. We travelled to Dori in northeastern Burkina Faso, where people are living on the front line of war and climate change. We wanted to find out how the invisible enemy of climate change is affecting people's lives and driving them from their homes. But first, we had to get there. Dori is the capital of Burkina Faso's war-torn Sahel province and home to thousands displaced by the conflict. The road from Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso's capital, to Dori is dangerous because of IEDs and pop-up terrorist checkpoints. Just 5 kilometers outside Dori, terrorists have attacked civilians and UN vehicles multiple times this year. Bergaye Lamizana grew up in Burkina Faso. Today she's based in Bonn, Germany, as project officer for the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification.
Climate change is a kind of invisible enemy in the Sahel conflict. UK Ministry of Defense said that 60 million people will migrate from degraded land, part of Africa, if nothing is done. I think neighboring countries and Europe can see this migration affecting them.
Migration manifests itself in different ways in the Sahel. Some people, as farming becomes impossible, move to the cities in hope of finding work, but often they end up with low-paying jobs or living in poverty. Some of those migrants in turn begin to move further afield, often to Europe. They take trafficking routes through Niger, Algeria, Libya, and then take boats across the Mediterranean. The crisis in the Sahel has displaced nearly 3.5 million people, according to the UN. We met Zara Areta, living in a host community on the edge of Dori. She's one of the 1.3 million internally displaced people in Burkina Faso. Zara came to Dori from Arbinda, a town about 60 kilometers away, where extremists regularly terrorized the communities, killing men, women and children. An attack on Arbinda in August left more than 80 people dead. She describes the raid that led her to flee Arbinda 2 years ago.
Il n'y a pas c'est comme, puisqu'on pensait même qu'on ne va même pas sortir, puisqu'il y a deux fois, il y a des balles perdues là même, c'est pas facile quoi. Voilà. En tout cas, c'est quoi on pensait là, on pensait que c'était bon, la fin du monde seulement, puisque les bruits de feu là, c'était trop. On a fui rentrer dedans, jusqu'à, bon, les feux, bon, on n'entendait plus les coups de feu. Maintenant, on est sorti au dehors. Quand on est sorti au dehors, bon, on entendait des nouvelles qui n'est pas bon en tout cas. Ce qu'on a tué plus de... Ce jour-là, on a tué plus de 18 personnes. Et tout ça s'était passé, c'est dans le marché, puisque c'était un jour de marché. Ils ont rentré la première fois. Puisque ça fait que moi-même, je ne me sens pas. J'ai des ulcères, ça fait même. Deux fois, même si j'entends cri ou bien quelque chose comme ça me rappelle de ce qui s'est passé à Arbinda. Bon, je suis une femme mariée, j'ai 5 enfants. Bon, des fois aussi, en tout cas, c'est que je fais le commerce, je fais le levage aussi. Bon, je fais travaux de ménage, travail de ma famille. Je m'occupe de mon mari et de mes enfants aussi.
In the years before she fled Arbinda, she noticed the weather starting to change. It diminished usable land and forced the community to change too.
Avant, il pleuvait, mais aujourd'hui, en tout cas, il ne pleut pas. Les gens mangeaient en famille, quoi. Et puis surtout, les enfants respectaient les grands. Les grands aussi respectaient les enfants. Les gens venaient, ils soutenaient. Par exemple, les baptêmes comme ça, les gens venaient, ils soutenaient.
Zara says that tensions between herder and farmer communities have increased, shattering the unity that once existed. Salem is also a migrant who fled terrorism. Like thousands of others in Burkina Faso, he's joined a state-backed militia group known as the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland. They act as auxiliaries and local guides for the military, but they've also been accused of carrying out extrajudicial killings against civilians they believe are linked to terrorists.
pagla kam kodame sakda gulo sakda wala kodo butoto sakda pihla la terroriste wa baras kalatin ko jende gulo kalatin gole ko kalatin ko abkin ha ton pil sora kom la ko yudu la nimbana école kalatin karmi l'autor yi kalebe terroriste namba hon ton nimbuide libra nimbana kan tar ton pisla ton ko ta songre on ka mi be pisi ton ha te yo rapport ton ka yo rapport ton ni won ta yo rapport wakat le nem tinti yanda bage yo bi ko lore tiam ta mi ka wa ne be jin kan yi kan lore la be ya tiesa ye yam ka mi Dia pun wat na zabu na kamang tu fobang dot na zaban fo. Pise model la katin bangi. Obse sa kana na kamang wa ton na bangam te bam la wata. La problème am pam ton jini sa. Ya lingri. Le problème de embuscade, embuscade, on se rien va te convaincre. Là, il y a un moment. On t'a dit, la rodo, la tempo, bien là, c'est ça, on a ça, on peut faire. Pas la tonne cahier, ton hand, c'est ton de tiens, n'a j'ai rien.
Having lived in Burkina Faso for 2 years now, I've borne witness to some of the worst effects of climate change anywhere in the world. It's a big factor in this country's conflict. Step outside of Ouagadougou and into the countryside and you'll find vast numbers of internally displaced people living in extreme poverty. There are IEDs on the roadside, terrorists roam the countryside freely. The state is unable to provide security with an overstretched military and people are living in fear. It seems where people clamour for resources diminished by climate change, they go into fight or flight mode. For those who want to fight, it means joining terror groups. Those groups mostly do not have a religious ideology as their primary aim. Instead, they're financially motivated. They're looking for resources to survive, resources that are being diminished by climate change. For others, like Salem, the effect of climate change means joining a local self-defense militia to try and fight back against the militants. But even he had to leave his hometown, just like South Arica. Resources are simply becoming too scarce, and it's too unsafe to stay. All of them are bound by the same thing, the enemy they cannot see, the man-made warming of the planet. Climate change contributes to conflict, and conflict leads to migration on an unprecedented scale in the Sahel. Analysts say the Sahel is a prototype for what will soon start happening in other parts of the globe as climate change continues and nothing is done. But aside from the devastation, people in the Sahel want to take back control of their futures.
What is the narrative of the Sahel which we could put out there? The Sahel is not only the land where it's a black doom and dying. It's a land of opportunities, having the two faces of the coin, not only the dark one, but also the lightened one. It's a region where you had the great kingdoms. It's a region where you have a vibrant youth. It's a region where you have a massive natural resources. Climate change is not just happening in the Sahel or in Africa. It's a global issue, and it's undermine health, it undermine agriculture, peace, security, in employment, and even economy. So by bringing together and intervening the political will with the action on the ground, we could really change a bit the narrative of the Sahel and give hope
C'est qu'en tout cas, moi, je pense tôt ou tard, en tout cas, il y aura la paix. Et moi-même, je souhaite que la paix règne sur cette terre. C'est ce que, en tout cas, je prie Dieu chaque fois et que je demande à Dieu que la paix règne pour que toute personne déplacée puisse retourner dans son coin et que la vie continue comme avant.
Tondo kota wende ti ton kamba to lebaran dik ton naure bala tondo ya buri kionne burkimbi la patrie où la mort nous vient courant.
That was journalist Henry Wilkins reporting for VOA. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. On Friday, we'll have a special edition of Africa 54 looking at how 5 African diaspora politicians from the Gambia, Liberia, Nigeria, and Somalia are making strides in the U.S. political scene. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.